Hey there, Gemini. This is Seven Scorpion Tarot, and I want to welcome you to tonight's reading. So, tonight I was just checking out the celestial weather, and it looks like we've got Jupiter retrograding through your sign. Um, so, the significance of that there would be prolific creativity, because Jupiter is Zeus. Is that right? I think that's right. That's like the Roman to Greek equivalent. But big, expansive energy and being applied to creativity and specifically prolific creativity. So many offspring, very Zeus like, very not demure, very not mindful to Hera. Um, Hell hath no fury. Um, so just thinking about creativity in general. And one of the things that I did today, actually, as of this recording, I'm going to post this in the morning. There's that rhyming again that keeps happening. Um, but I published a poem on the channel, on my Instagram, on my TikTok. It's something that I had written a couple of years ago when I was going through some really heavy symptom expression of misdiagnosed. They're called PNES seizures, psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. Another like name for them is called conversion disorder. And it was originally misdiagnosed as another disorder that I'm not even going to um, name that as to not lend stigma to people who do actually live with that disorder. Um, but the immense amount of suffering that I went through is just absolutely incredible, from me being misdiagnosed due to bias. But I wrote this poem during that really difficult medical event, and I thought it was really cool. It's a poem made up of song titles, and I called it She Is Me. Um, I actually don't really remember what the inspiration for that was. Uh, Maybe I was just trying to cope with what was going on right at the time. Um, because it's got some heavy like feelings related to my experience with PTSD. And I mean, when I that was in the beginning of January of 2023, and it would have been late 2022 that I had the worst flashback of my life. Um, and it kicked off just the mother load of seizure after seizure after seizure after seizure, and completely unmitigated at that point. Like, I wrote that poem in January, and then in March, I started on the initial dose of one of my medications, which was like 100 milligrams. My present day dose, now 2 years later, is like 1800 milligrams, plus a secondary anticonvulsant. So I was completely not treated correctly. Um, but one of the good things that came out of that, I thought, was one of that poem. And but unfortunately, because I was experiencing such difficult symptoms, or that was a bit of an assumption. That's my assumption. I did not get any kind of interest being taken in that poem by my family, by my social circle, really by anybody at that time. And that made me really sad because I thought that was a really cool idea to write a poem of song titles. So, like the first line is, I think it was In This River of Fire. And then the first song in the corresponding playlist, like under that same title, She Is Me, is River of Fire by In This Moment. And so, like, each line, not exactly, but like I capitalized the song titles. But as you go through the poem, those song titles are capitalized, and then I've got it all organized into a playlist here on the channel. Uh, and like, I do remember vaguely, because my poor brain been ravaged unnecessarily. Uh, like I bought business cards to start a charity under the same name, which was ambitious. Like it reminds me of that meme that came out of the Marvel show. It's like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Is like he's got the spirit. He's over the line, but he's got the spirit. So like I still have that box of business cards. Just it's not hurting anything on my shelf. It's just there as kind of a keepsake of like a very unfortunate and strange time in my life. But I thought I'd put that poem out there again. A couple years later, having now being properly treated and having been with the right fit for a therapist for me for a little over a year ish. Uh, things are going so much better, and like that poem really feels like just a chunk of my soul that like it came out of pain. Uh, so I definitely had the angsties, the anxieties, putting that out there. But I felt like that was a really good way to start re-engaging my faith that I had been driven away from because of the way that I had been treated in my home when I was a kid. Because In Bulk is on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday, the first. Um, Saint Brigid's Day. Depending on which pantheon paradigm you fall under, if it's Brigid or Saint Brigid, or however, if you just want to celebrate that transition of winter into spring, being at kind of that halfway point, or if you want to celebrate the Cailleach, uh, the old Irish hag that walked across the mountainside, potentially picking off the sick and the elderly and whatnot. That part's a little dark, um, because Irish mythology, we like to keep things on the bright side, right? Um, but no matter what you're doing, and if you believe in anyone or not, assume if you're watching tarot, you might believe in something, or at least open to it. Um, Poetry's good for all of us. I just seen something like it was like a meme or something on Instagram. It was like one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was like read a poem once a week, because if you don't, your soul starts to die, and that's really good advice. Um, I want to personally hawk mine, here, but there's a ton of poets on Instagram, and of course there's the classics like Virginia Woolf, Rumi, the what's her bucket, Mary Oliver, the Wild Geese poem. I really like that one. Um, and so many that I haven't discovered, so many in other languages that I don't speak. Just an endless library of poetry out there. And Brigid is the goddess of poetry and the creative flame. And so that was my way of taking that step forward of what, the past really 4 or 5 years have been absolute hell for me, just complete absolute nightmare. And I'm stepping back into the light, and that takes some bravery. I might watch Brave. I love that movie. uh like being vulnerable is really hard for anybody. But somebody living with post traumatic stress disorder, I think anybody out there who is living with that, if you're out there listening, uh, you know that that's got that extra spice to it when it comes to vulnerability because we've got all that proof, all that evidence of vulnerability equals pain, and not just pain, but trauma, things that are completely overwhelming for the nervous system. Uh, but there's a really powerful TED talk on vulnerability by Brene Brown called The Power of Vulnerability. And she, like me, hates vulnerability and has somehow made a life out of it. It's really, really impressive, really cool. I would definitely recommend that TED talk, easy to find on YouTube. She's so sage. Really, like I say, she's one of my favorite authors, but really, I just like listening to her talk. I like listening to her voice. For some reason, that medium, like her words, hit so much more through her voice specifically. So that would be my recommendation for Jupiter retrograding through Gemini. Poetry, Brene Brown, vulnerability, stuff like that. Stuff to keep moving forward towards the spring. So let's do self, shadow, and ego as per the usual. I'm going to see just, I don't know, what, some little extra to dive down into in the self. Maybe a topic for a painting or a poem or something. Because some of the best art can come from some of the deepest wounds. Not that I want anybody to be wounded, but if you find yourself occupying this mortal coil, you're going to have a wound or two. Uh, so maybe this is something that whatever your respective form of art could help transmute as they plop right on out with impeccable timing. Nine of Pentacles in the reverse and Three of Cups in the upright. So this Nine of Pentacles is interesting because it's typically a woman with a falcon that has like the falconry hood over its eyes, but it's a wolf, a crow, and a butterfly. You can see that. So transformation with the butterfly. And the way I'm reading this, just this image, is that like the crow's in charge. And I know I have some bias towards crows, favorably, obviously, with the massive ring. uh, a couple of lotuses at the bottom, no mud, no lotus. I think that's and I'm gonna butcher this name, like Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a monk who passed away not all too long ago, like the scholar on Buddhism, like the modern scholar on Buddhism. Uh, really impressive works from him. While we were gifted enough to have him. And this, like the lone tree, this is my own, again, personal bias kind of showing through. A fairy tree, potentially. Like the trees that are out in the middle of nowhere that, yeah, they may be skeptical in modern day Ireland, but you're not going to catch anybody cutting down a fairy tree. It's just the duality of the Irish. which I've always loved so much. But so something to not be disturbed that has been disturbed, like kind of upturned. There's the card of independence and then the card of the crowd. Maybe you're transforming from that lone wolf into seeking more community. Uh, like this doesn't have to be read as necessarily like a negative thing, like your independence is being taken away from you, but you're turning away from such a hard stance on, maybe you've been in hermit mode. Like that's what I've been doing for sure. And now you're trying to build community after you've had some time to heal, some time to lick your wounds, whatever was going on. Uh that's a really good, I think, reading for the self position of reclaiming community. And we really need that right now more than ever. I'm going to start shuffling for the shadow in the bottom. Ooh, conflict. Five of Wands. But yeah, community now more than ever. I'm seeing more and more articles about ICE raids. Sometimes on elementary schools, they're showing up, uh, which is just a horrifying reality. Like, I'm having a really difficult time concentrating on stuff. Like, now that my blinders are off, I tried to put them back on and they don't seem to fit anymore. Uh, it's atrocious. It is atrocious the way we are treating American citizens. Uh, and human beings. Like, but also, and human beings. Come on. Like, just, my goodness gracious. And I cannot just sit there and pretend it's not happening. Like, at the end of the week, last week, I was in some meeting and I accidentally caught a headline. It was the one about the elementary school, that ICE agents were showing up at an elementary school. Uh, and thank goodness for webcam covers because I was just crying in the meeting, that I was supposed to be paying attention to. I was just crying. And then when it was my turn to talk, I just put on my customer service voice. You have no idea that I was in tears, which is a disgusting reality that I'm having to put on this mask and pretend like human beings aren't being treated worse than cattle. Like we treat cattle better than this. I could not be more angry. Maybe that's why the Five of Wands was the bottom of the deck. But community not only can help stand up against those injustices, but it can help you recover from standing up against injustices because you got to take a break. You really do. I can absolutely empathize with getting completely lost in it, in the rumination, in the I have to stand up for everybody right now, that altruistic supercharge that, Pisces Sun Venus North Node. I've got that Piscean supercharge when it comes to altruism. Uh, and you have to take a break so that you can fight another day. Four of Cups in the reverse, in the shadow. So that's apathy. And the way I was just ranting was very much like the antithesis of apathy. So Hmm. The thing that just popped in my mind was like, you're no longer being just taking what's being fed to you, you're being critical of the cups that are being handed to you. And that can very much be a shadowy trait because like I've received like so little emotional nurturing in my life. I've accepted a lot of garbage treatment in interpersonal relationships, be it like romantic or platonic, etc., like work even, you know. Um but now maybe we're moving into a place of like, no, let me actually see what's in this cup, like turn it over, turn it on its head, and take a good hard look at like what is being offered to me, and is this something healthy? Is this a cup that I am just accepting because of poor like relational patterns from the past? Like just taking that opportunity to um be critical of the cup that's being offered to you. And it doesn't mean, it's not rude to be like, hey, I need to sleep on this. Like if it's like a work thing or like a car or whatever, especially if it's a car that like you're getting from somebody and not like a dealership or whatever, like you want to get the um like the VIN number and whatnot so you can get the accident report to see if there were any accidents to that vehicle with frame damage and whatnot. And if somebody is like resistant to that, it's a lemon. It is a lemon. If someone will not let you scrutinize what's in the cup, more, I'm going to say like 9 times out of 10, pass on the cup. Like, cool mystery cup, like, yay, maybe there's a prize in it, but like, if it's going to be your vehicle or your job, like, no, no. Do save surprises and mystery stuff for like less crucial things, my personal opinion. Start shuffling for the ego. But I used to like just accept like, oh, I'm getting something. This is different. No, self-worth. And the unfortunate reality of my situation is I had to boot almost everybody from my life in order to like pull myself out of that um system I was in, that family system, that social system, whatever, to actually pull my head up and look at the horizon and start seeing like, oh, my version of normal is considerably abnormal. Like, and that's another thing community can help you with, is it can give you perspective on if your scope is too narrow, if your scope is too wide, if you're getting too altruistic, they can help you reel it in, whatever that may be. Let's see, for the ego. Then this will include that persona space of the ego, so the most outer facing part of our psyche that would like handle the interactions with the external world. Or your rising sign would be another way to look at that. Ooh, fours on either side. Okay. So four of pentacles in the upright. And I like this posture better than the rider waite. That's like, how do I do this for this angle? That's close enough. Um, but like kind of clamping down on the pentacle, and rather than one at the bottom, there's two, like one under each foot, and really like wrapping around one at the center of the chest and then have the one on the head. This posture is a bit more open, like the understanding that resources fluctuate and they must flow. Like you want to make sure it's balanced for sure, but you have to, it's not necessarily like you have to spend money to make money, but it's like a meme that I had mentioned in a recent one of the last two readings, that like my New Year's resolution, I think it was one of the last two readings recently, whatever. My New Year's resolution is to no longer hold on to the expensive things. Like use the expensive perfume oil at home, use the decorative candle, like what have you. Like it's just, it's not going crazy with spending, but it's not being super stingy either. Like maybe if you typically buy generic, maybe buy like a brand name shampoo or whatever, like whatever is respective for your situation that might be a little bit of a bump, like a little bit of an upgrade. Um I'm trying to think of a good example for me. I'm such a creature of habit. So this might be like for me like a treat yourself moment. Like nothing too crazy. You know, tax season is coming up, whatnot. Maybe start considering how I want to utilize that and ensuring that I bake a reward into that. Because I have a tendency to go straight for needs. I think that's what I did last year. It was a lot of like, I need a massive Target run for cleaning supplies and like all this stuff and like groceries and this and that and the other thing. And I went through my tax refund so freaking fast. And it was the first year that I've ever paid in. It's not like I suddenly made a huge amount of money additionally. Uh, it was those sunset clauses that were baked into the tax code changes from like 2017 or whatever. Those finally hit my income bracket. And then I paid in for the first time, which was wild to me. Uh, I'm not making really enough to be doing that. I don't know. I don't want to get on a tax rant. Um, but like for me, I've been one of the things that's been on my mind is upgrading my Xbox. I've my Xbox One. It's like the Xbox One X enhanced or whatever. It's the last one before they started making the big boxy like series, the most recent ones. Um, and it's finally aged out to the point where I can't play the newer games. So that's like now on my short list because I think I'm behind one Assassin's Creed now, which is a travesty. And I almost got it a couple years ago. Other stuff happened. I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna see if I can work that out or not. One thing at a time, right? But that, I think this is more like the responsible spending version of this card. I'll get the Urban Crow Oracle. And I really like both these decks, the Crow Tarot and the Crow Oracle. I know when I first started reading tarot, I was drawn to decks that have animals and not necessarily people uh, on them. It wasn't until later that I got a Game of Thrones tarot deck that the people imagery really started to click because I was able to relate it to like the show and like start to like put everything together. Whereas like with animals, I was just sort of able to read it more archetypally, archetypally, um, naturally. So if you're just getting into reading tarot, maybe find something that just clicks for you like that, something with a story structure to help you kind of bake that into the major and minor arcana. I found that really helpful. I thought Lady Elena as the Queen of Pentacles was pretty perfect. I don't even remember why going on about that. Dominance. Very Game of Thrones. uh, hmm. That's really contradictory energy. Huh. The song Fearless by Amaranth is popping into my head. Uh, Ultimate Dominion. But that's a really like positive song. So this felt like contradictory at first, but maybe this is you. Like instead of being on the bottom, you're on the top now. Something flipped. Oh yeah, like contradictory, like okay, something changed. And there's a poppy at the bottom. Milk of the poppy. Somebody's gonna need some pain relief. Maybe it's whoever crossed you. uh Mind the fisticuffs if at all possible. Use your words. As like ferociously as you need to for the situation, and just mind your social distancing. But maybe something has changed, like just in the vibe. And what is tomorrow? That's the new moon in Aquarius. That's the innovator, that's the eccentric, that's the visionary. So something's different. Coming out of this solitary phase into a communal phase that you are ready to take on the world, as it were. Uh, Maybe you're ready to come out of your hidey hole and so help them, anybody who's on the business end of you, like if they get in the way of that progress, I could totally see that. Uh, and hopefully there will be community there for you to recover from any, squabbles, things like that, because it's good to decompress after any kind of disagreement, any kind of argument, whatever. Uh, and maybe this is like a cautionary, like be mindful of the temper. Maybe there's some newfound gusto, some newfound confidence in whatever it is that changed. Uh, Good energy overall, though. I want to get a song too. Kind of got a random urge to do that. And there are not only songs in this deck, so I guess we'll see what pops out. And this one going a little bit longer than my typical sign specific reading. So if you're here, I appreciate you sticking around. Get you out of here shortly. just gonna go with all three since all three were songs, and that's what flew out of my mouth. So Lost on You, LP, really interesting like vocal sound to that. Medicine Man by Dorothy, and Go Your Own Way, Fleetwood Mac. So a little bluesy, a little old school, little classic, I guess. Is Fleetwood Mac classic already? I hate myself. Um, I feel like I should apologize to Stevie Nicks. But she will go down in the Hall of Fame, right? I hope so, at least if she's not already in there. Because the vocals on Rhiannon, like this Lost on You is like a exaggerated uh kind of version of that. So interesting. But overall, I hope this helps and I hope this resonates. If it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.